Hi and welcome to the Unconditional Webcast. I'm Tammy Smith with realestate.co.nz, and today we have Mark Sumich with Sumich Realty here. He is the 3 times New Zealand Auctioneering Championships and a 2 times Australasian Auctioneering Championships.
First call at 1.925 on the money. Hoist in, ladies and gentlemen. Reassert control on proceedings. Sir, where are you when I need you? At 1,925,000, Madam Arms fold you won't...
1933.
Inevitably. 1933.
Mark, thank you for coming and being here with us today.
Pleasure, thank you.
Yeah, so tell us, how's your day gone today?
Well, Wednesdays, usually quite a few calls to make around town. A lot of people do their auctions midweek now. But in quite a rare set of circumstances, the 4 I had to call today have all sold before the auction. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So how does it work if someone wants to make an offer before it actually goes to auction?
Well, most properties are for sale now, whether the auction might be tomorrow or in 3 weeks' time. And if you make an offer which is appropriate and acceptable by the owner, they can sell it at any time, and buyers probably need to be aware of that.
What can a potential home buyer expect when they reach an auction?
Well, they should expect anything to happen, to be frank. There's all sorts of strategies and things like that which are in play nowadays. But what I'm seeing out there in the marketplace is that those people who are bidding have notoriously been to a few auctions beforehand and have experienced it. They're not fazed by it, and they've done their homework, their due diligence, and they are ready to pay cash on the day.
So that's the main thing, is to make sure you do your homework before you go to the auction. Also, does the auctioneer work on behalf of the vendor, or is it more of a neutral play that the auctioneer has?
Well, the auctioneer is somewhat in the middle, but at the end of the day, they're mostly being paid by the owner. They're there to represent them with their property and to get the best price they can. But inevitably they need a buyer or buyers and to make it all happen. So I often find now that buyers are approaching me before the auction and saying, hey, are you the auctioneer? Yes, I'm interested in buying this property. Any tips you could give me, or make sure you look out for me during the auction. So it's become a more involved scenario of recent times, and it's good fun at the moment.
Okay, great. And do you actually recommend someone to go to an auction, possibly that they're not bidding in, to get a feel for what an auction environment is like?
That is without doubt a critical element. If you are going to buy now in an auction-orientated market, you should definitely be going to that. You'll almost certainly be caught up in it at some stage if you're looking to buy a property in one of the bigger areas. A lot of them will be auctioned now, so you may as well have that experience, because it can be quite daunting unless you've been before.
I could imagine. And what should a potential home buyer who's going to an auction, what should they actually bring with them to the auction? Well,
I guess there's a couple of issues that go on beforehand. They now have the appropriate agreements guide. They need to have been provided with that by the agent under the Real Estate Agents Act of 2008. So they have that. They can take that electronically now, or hard copies. They are there. If they're going to come along and bid, they need to be sure that they've done their research and checked the council records on the property. A lot of people get building reports done. You need to be sure that the bank is going to give you the money. Now, that all might seem a little cumbersome, but the reality is now the banks are moving in the right direction with financing, and they understand the importance of people being able to bid at an auction. So they're usually, of recent times, being particularly helpful. The building side of things and the with the leaking side of things, you need to be pretty thorough and make sure, because there's no cooling off period in New Zealand like there is in some of the Australian states. So you've got to be pretty prepared.
So it's definitely good to get a building inspection, maybe a pest inspection, make sure that the home is actually good for you to buy before you actually go to auction.
Well, this is where we've come a little unstuck of recent times, where people are having to invest money in it beforehand, and then they're missing out and they're getting quite flustered. It's amazing how many people have a brother or an uncle or a grandfather who's swung the odd hammer before and can give a good summary of things. But we are finding that people are prepared to spend a little bit of money beforehand. It's part of their research into a home. They might be there for a generation, and if you're going to be there for 5, 10, 25 years, it's not silly to spend the money to make sure you're getting what you think you're getting.
Right, okay. And so when you do go to an auction, is there any tips that you can give someone for bidding, to be a successful bidder at an auction?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, of course. And look, there are no secrets, really. But what I'm finding is that people tend to be slightly cautious. It's a classic Kiwi approach, very cautious.
Bit laid back.
Yeah, that's right. And that is often to their detriment. I've often held the adage that you should come in fairly strongly, show that you want to buy it, impose yourself on the auction, and dominate proceedings with prompt bidding. And bidding aggressively almost, not to the point where you are disconcertingly so, but in a scenario where there's two or three of you wanting to buy the property, you should be dictating terms and bidding promptly, I guess is the way I would describe it most.
Right, okay. So say that you're not one of those strong-willed people and you feel a bit intimidated with the bidding. Is there any way that you can actually hire someone or bring someone else to do the bidding for you?
Well, you need to be pretty sure that you've got a watertight agreement there, because the auctioneer's bind is to whoever puts their hand up and it's knocked down to that person. So you've got to make sure you've got arrangements which are satisfactory and legally tight if you've got somebody else bidding. But that happens a lot. We have fathers bidding for their daughters and people bidding by phone for other people. So there are plenty of ways you can get around that, provided you've covered all the bases off.
Yes, okay. And with the biddings, usually when they go up in price, what are usually the increments which they go up in price? Is it usually 500, 1,000, or does it really vary?
It does vary, and it will depend a lot on where things might end up price-wise. For example, if it was a $500,000 house, it might be expected that the bids might be in $10,000 or $20,000 increments initially, and then you might find that they drop down as you get closer to the figure when people's budgets run out, or where they're trying to make sure they're buying it for the least amount, which is their aim, of course. That might get right down to $500 bids, even $250 bids.
Wow, okay.
But at any stage, you can place a bid at a lower level than the auctioneer's asking, but the reality is the auctioneer doesn't have to accept that.
Okay.
All right, but it's in their hands, the auctioneer. They may choose to. I'm probably one of the more friendly ones around who will take the lower bids for the purposes of moving the auction on. But you should never be afraid to ask whether you can place a lower bid.
Oh, that's very good advice. Well, is there any final advice that you can give to someone who's a home buyer who's going to go to an auction?
Well, it's something I mentioned earlier, really, that you should be going to a few beforehand, understanding it. And I always find that it's very helpful to approach the auctioneer beforehand. Say to him or her, look, I'm interested in buying this house here today. Can you make sure you keep an eye out for me? Yeah, absolutely. And I always take not a friendlier approach to them, but I'm also always keen to see them do well, and just that extra glance in their direction can aid them or comfort them in what can be a fairly stressful experience.
Yes, I could imagine it would be stressful for someone who doesn't really know necessarily what they're doing at an auction.
No, but it's amazing how quickly you learn. When it's your money and your repayments every month, you know what you're doing fairly quickly.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Mark, for coming and joining us today. And we'll look forward to hopefully having a part 2 session with you on auctions at a later date.
Pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and join us again next time with the Unconditional Webcast.